I messed up big time 10 years ago. Not the kind of mistake you can brush off, but the kind that follows you around and keeps you up at night. I was 25 when I met her at a local coffee shop. She was working there while studying to become a nurse, and I'd stop by every morning before heading to my office job. She had this contagious laugh that would light up the whole place. Her hair was always tied up in this messy bun with a few strands falling around her face. We started talking more each day, and soon enough, I found myself looking forward to those morning conversations more than anything else. After a few weeks of being a regular customer, I finally asked her out. We clicked instantly. She was 23, ambitious, and had everything figured out. Meanwhile, I was still trying to understand what I wanted from life. She had this way of making everything seem possible. When she talked about her dreams, I couldn't help but get caught up in them too. We dated for 3 years, and they were the best years of my life. Her family welcomed me like their own. Her dad, who worked at the local bank, took some time to warm up to me, but eventually we'd watch sports together on weekends. Her mom would always invite me for Sunday dinners, and her younger sister would ask for help with her math homework. My family loved her too. My parents would constantly hint about marriage, and my older cousin Jake would tease me about how I managed to find someone so out of my league. Even my old rescue dog would choose to sleep in her lap instead of mine when she came over. She talked about wanting a house in the suburbs, close enough to the city for work but far enough to have a big backyard. She dreamed of having a family. She'd talk about it often, sharing names she liked for future kids and how she'd decorate their rooms. I'd nod along, thinking I wanted the same things. But something changed in me during our 3rd year together. The more she talked about having kids, the more I realized I didn't want that life. The thought of being responsible for another human being started to terrify me. I wanted to focus on my career, travel the world, and live without being tied down. I tried ignoring these feelings at first, hoping they'd go away. One night, after a few beers at home, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told her I didn't want kids ever. She sat there quietly, looking at me with those understanding eyes that made everything worse. Instead of arguing or trying to change my mind, she simply said we wanted different things in life. That's when I lost it. I couldn't accept that she was being so reasonable while my world was falling apart. I started shouting, saying horrible things about how wanting kids was stupid and limiting. I kicked furniture and punched walls while she calmly gathered her things. The last thing she said before walking out was that she hoped I'd find what I was looking for. My family was devastated when they heard what happened. Mom wouldn't speak to me for weeks, and Jake told me I was the biggest idiot he'd ever met. They were right, of course, but I was too proud to admit it then. 10 years passed. I tried dating other people, but nothing lasted more than a couple of months. My job in sales had me moving from city to city, which was perfect for someone running from their past. But last month, my company transferred me back to my hometown. Walking these streets again brought back memories I'd spent years trying to forget. The coffee shop where we met is now a phone repair store. The park bench where we had our first kiss has been replaced. But her old apartment building still stands, looking exactly the same. I ran into Jake at the supermarket last week. He's still in touch with her through social media. I found out she married someone 5 years after we broke up, a high school teacher. They had 2 little girls together. But life threw her another curveball when her husband passed away unexpectedly 4 years ago while she was expecting their second daughter. That news hit me hard. I spent the next few days thinking about her raising those girls alone, being both mom and dad. The same kids I once thought would ruin my life were now the center of hers, and she was handling it with the same grace she showed when walking away from me 10 years ago. After a week of going back and forth in my head, I sent her a message through social media. I didn't expect a response, but she replied the next day. We started catching up through messages, keeping things light and casual. She's still working at the same hospital, living in a small house just outside town, the kind of place she always wanted. Finally, I asked if she'd meet me for coffee. To my surprise, she agreed. We set up a time for next week after her shift at the hospital. I'm nervous as hell. I bought her favorite flowers, yellow daisies, just like the ones she used to keep on her windowsill. I even found that old cologne she liked so much. I've practiced what I want to say 100 times in my head. I want to tell her how sorry I am, how much I've grown, how I understand now that I was afraid of growing up more than anything else. But I'm worried I'll mess it up again. What if seeing her brings back all those feelings and I can't keep it together? What if she only agreed to meet to get closure and move on completely. A small part of me hopes there's still a chance, even though I know I don't deserve one. The day of our meeting arrives, and I find myself sitting in my car outside the coffee shop an hour early, watching people come and go, my heart racing every time the door opens. When she walks in, time stops. She looks different, but exactly the same. Her hair is shorter now, and there are tiny lines around her eyes when she smiles, but she's still the most beautiful person I've ever seen. She spots me and walks over, and suddenly I'm 25 again, watching her laugh behind the counter of that old coffee shop. We talk for hours. She asks about my life, and I try to focus on her questions, but I keep getting lost in how familiar yet different she seems. She's more confident now, carries herself differently. When she talks about her daughters, her whole face lights up. The older one loves gymnastics, and the younger one is already reading chapter books. I want to reach across the table and hold her hand like I used to, but I keep my distance. When she mentions her late husband, I see both strength and sadness in her eyes. She tells me he was a good man who loved their girls more than anything. The way she talks about him makes me realize what real maturity looks like. Finally, the conversation turns to our past. I ask if she ever thought about me after we broke up. She takes a long time to answer, stirring her coffee that's already cold. She admits that our breakup hit her hard. She had planned our whole future, the house, the kids, everything. When it all fell apart, she felt lost for a while. She tells me she almost convinced herself she didn't want kids, just to keep us together. But she knew that would have made her unhappy forever. I apologize for how I acted that night, for the things I said, for throwing away what we had. She says she forgave me years ago. That's just who she is. Taking a deep breath, I ask if there's any chance we could try again. The silence that follows feels endless. She looks at me with those kind eyes I remember so well and says she's not opposed to having me in her life, but romance isn't something she's ready for. She needs to trust me again first, and that will take time. It's not the answer I hoped for, but it's more than I deserve. I tell her I'd be happy just being part of her life in any way she's comfortable with. I promise to prove that I've changed, that I understand what I threw away 10 years ago. As we get ready to leave, she shows me a picture of her daughters on her phone. They have her smile. Looking at their faces, I feel something shift inside me. These aren't the burdens I once imagined kids to be. They're little people with their own dreams and laughs and stories. We agree to meet again next week. It's a small step, but it's something. Walking back to my car, I realize I'm smiling. Maybe this isn't the romantic reunion I fantasized about, but it's real. She's giving me a chance to be in her life again, and this time, I won't let fear ruin it. I know it won't be easy. She has 2 daughters to think about, and a past that includes both beautiful and painful memories. I'll need to prove myself not just to her, but to her family, her friends, and most importantly, to her girls. But for the first time in 10 years, I feel like I'm exactly where I need to be. Some people might say I'm crazy for trying to rebuild something that broke so long ago. Maybe they're right. But sitting across from her today, watching her talk about her life, her dreams, her kids, I finally understood what growing up really means. It's not about giving up freedom. It's about finding something worth committing to. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button to help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.